This is a quick intro to Logisim Evolution, the design tool we'll be using to create and simulate circuits in this class. When you first launch Logisim, you'll notice three primary areas in the window. The first area is, well, you got your menu section along the top, right? So it's got two primary menu items, and it is design and simulate. You spend most of your time in design creating your circuit. The simulate, when you're ready to run your circuit, then you'll be doing so from the simulate menu. The pointer finger, the finger here, is how you set values in certain elements in your circuit. Like, for example, if you want to set the value of a pin, then you have to use the pointy finger, the finger pointer, right? I call it. And the regular pointer is you'll select circuits and drag them around and do other things. This is your connector. That's a text box. This is a input pin. That's an output pin. This is a NOT gate. This is an AND gate. You'll see as I select these items, well, notice my cursor, like if I select AND gate and I just bring my cursor down to the main circuit window, okay? This is this big area with the grid. Then you just drop the circuit in there, right? I'll get to that in a second. Let me delete that. But you have the basic gates along the top. And then you have, here we have a D flip-flop and we have a register. Okay, so these are the quick circuits, okay, that you can add. Again, this big area with the grid, you can turn that grid on and off down here. You can select the size. Let me show you how to select the size. So let's say I put an AND gate here. I can change the size of the circuit by increasing the, dragging the slider, or decreasing the size of the circuit. I can set the size of the circuit by clicking one of these buttons, okay, for a quick change. All right. You can resize the circuit by just selecting, I think, anywhere. Oh, hang on. Let's hit the pointer and then select the background, right? I mean the finger pointer, okay, to drag around. All right. And then to select the circuit, you use the regular pointer. And then if you want to delete, just hit the delete key. Okay. But anyway, this is your properties window down here. This is your libraries window up here in the upper left-hand corner. This is where your main circuit is. Every time you launch Logisim Evolution with a new circuit, right? If you're going to create a new one, you're going to have a main. Now, if you're going to create a circuit that you want to use as a library and import into another circuit that has a main, there can only be one main, okay? One main circuit. I can create another circuit. I can add a circuit here, but we'll talk about that in a second. And you'll see what I mean. These libraries have certain components that we'll use. We'll use some of these. We won't use all of them in the class, okay? But anyway, that's a rough intro to the layout of the tool. So let's actually create a small circuit, and I'll show you how to add elements to the circuit, set values on the circuit, simulate it, etc. Okay, change the size, etc. The first thing I recommend you do before you start creating a circuit is save. You'll notice that this is untitled. So you can't see the main menu, but up on your computer screen in the upper right-hand corner, there's a menu. Just select File, Save. Okay. I'm going to save mine in my temporary folder. So I'm just going to call this test. Okay. And it will be saved with a extension of CIRC for circuit. So save it. Now, so the name of the file, or the name of the file that you just saved, is the name of the circuit. So this circuit is called test. All right, and it has a main. Now, we can we could change the name. I think every circuit that runs has to have a main, right? But let's say, anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Now let's add a gate. Okay, so I'm going to click on an AND gate, and I'm going to drag it to the circuit, okay, or to the circuit board, okay, and just drop it there. And you can select the circuit, okay. You can change, let's see here. All right, now by default, if you want to change the size, right, you just have to drag your slider, okay. If you want to reposition the circuit on the screen, okay. So let's go ahead and just create a 2-input AND gate going to, and it's got 1 output, right? So let's actually add something to show us what the value of the output will be. So I'm going to go to my I/O library over here in the left-hand corner, and I'm just going to drag this LED. I'm not going to drag it, I'm just going to select it and then place it right here. Now you'll notice it's got this little dot, right? Let me make this bigger so we can see this better on the screen. Okay, so we have this dot right here. These are connectors, right? So I'm going to add a connector between them right there. Okay, and let me reposition the circuit in the center. Now I'm going to select an input gate or an input pin, and the value of this pin is 0 at the time. And I'm going to select another input pin for this input. So we have a 2. Now I could, if you double click the pin, you can name it. So I'm going to say A and B. Now go make sure that your pointer is selected and select like the top one. And over here in the left-hand properties, okay, over here on the left side, in your properties, we have output. We can leave that no, okay. Data bit's 1. So each of these, like this particular pin, has 1 data bit. If we wanted to change it to 2 data bits, then we select 2, hit return, and now we'd have we could add, each value would be more than, it would be however many inputs you select here, right? Let's leave that at 1. Okay. Now, because it really doesn't make much sense on an AND gate that you'd have a 2-input pin, right? Try 3-state, no, we'll leave that no. Pull behavior unchanged. A lot of these things may or may not apply to the gate you're working on, right? Radix is binary, that's fine. Parents, arrow shapes, classic Logisim. I like the arrow shapes. Okay, now that we have our circuit, we can simulate it. All right. So to simulate, you go to select the pointing finger. You can go to the simulate, and right now it's actively simulating as we speak, right? So we can start the simulation. We got our pin. I'm going to deselect that gate so it's not too hideous. Select your pointing finger, and then come down here, and we're going to set that to 1. And because it's an AND gate, it takes all inputs to be a 1 before you get an output, right? So let's test that theory. 1, now our LED shows up, okay? Or lights up. Now if we set this to 0, the A, then that output goes negative, right? And both are 0, then the output is still 0. Both are 1, the output goes high. So now let's say that we wanted to have this to be a 3-input AND gate. So you would select the AND gate, okay, and then you change the number of inputs over here based on what you need, right? So let's say we want a 3-input AND gate. We hit enter. Now we got another dot shows up, right? So generally speaking, when you get more than two, it gets a little crowded here, right? So I like to then start changing these positions. And in circuit design, usually your inputs come from the left or at the top. So sometimes I'll do this, right? I'll go ahead and move this input up here to the top. And to change the orientation, you hit an up or down or left and right arrow key. So I'm going to hit my up arrow key. You see how that changed it? I'm going to hit my down arrow key. And then I'm going to hit my left arrow key and my right arrow key. All right. So I'm going to go back to my down arrow key. And that's kind of the orientation I want. I can then select the segment here and move the segment where I want it. I actually just want it like this. Okay. And probably not so high up. So I'm going to bring it down a few like that. And then I'm going to do the same to the B, but I'm going to actually delete that and do that. And I'm going to create my pins along the top. So this is the way I usually do it, right? I'll say, here's a pin, and then here's another pin, right? Like that. And I'm going to select this pin, and I'm going to orient it the way I want it oriented. I'm going to select this one, orient it, and by that I'm doing the down key or the down arrow key. Now I've got my three inputs along the top, and then I'm going to now it depends on how many other gates I have, right? So and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. If I'm going to connect these to the input now. So you come down, you just click, go to the level, and then just move to that direction. And of course, we don't get the behavior. Oh, you know what? Let's see here. That's pretty funny. All right. Let's click there. Sometimes you just got to stop what you're doing. And I'm going to stop the simulation. Go back to design. All right. Go here. All right. So select here. Usually you just go like that and it will do it. This is great. Come down here. There we go. Maybe you had to actually select that gate or that pin. So I'm right here. I click on that pin. I come down to that one. There we go. Sometimes you just got to see your instructor flail. Okay. Now we have now let's change the names of these to two other pins. So I'll make this one B. And I'll make this one C. All right. I will reposition the circuit in the center of the screen or the board. And now let's simulate it. Well, first I'm going to deselect that C input. So go to simulate, start the simulation, hit the pointy finger, and now I'm going to do A is 1, B is 1, and C is 1, and now we have an output. Okay. Now let's add another gate to it. Okay. And so I'm going to click here. You don't necessarily have to stop the simulation, but if you see anything wonky when you're trying to do your designs, then that's probably something you want to do. All right, so I'm going to reposition this up this way a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to select this part and this, and I'm going to drag it this way. So now when you drag, your connectors should drag with you, right? Of course, that depends kind of on the complexity of your circuit. Now, the reason you'd want to do this is, let's say I wanted to have another AND gate, okay, or another, let's say, yeah, it could be another AND gate, right, for whatever reason. Let's say that I wanted to have, I'm going to drop another AND gate here. So AND gate, right, like this, and I'm going to change the input to 3. 3 like that. 3. Hit return. All right. Now, I'm going to use these inputs. Okay. Now, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to use these inputs that I have coming down A, B, C, and I'm going to let's say that this is A, B, C, right? Just without any negation on the inputs. But now let's say that we needed to negate one of the inputs on this AND gate as part of our circuit. Okay. So we select the circuit, we come down here, and we've got these 3 inputs. So now you'll see negate 1, negate 2, negate 3. And it'll tell you which one 1 is. 1's at the top, 2's not in the top, and 3's at the bottom. So negate 2's in the middle, right? So it'll say negate, and I'm going to select yes. Okay. So now we've got this A, or the first input to this AND gate, negated. All right. So I'm going to copy. I'm going to extend, the line from like A down to A on the second gate, right? So from A on the first gate. And I think I'll come over this way a little bit. Maybe right there. Okay. And I'm just going to come down and do that. Now, sometimes Logisim is smart. You see where, as I started dragging down, it started to extend to the right. And then I'm going to bring C down in the same fashion. So I'm here. I'm going to select C. I'll come like this, or B down. I'll bring B down and bring it over to the second input. And the same for C. And do that. Okay, so now this circuit is A, or ABC, okay, and ABC not, okay, or A not BC for the second circuit. The first circuit is ABC. This first AND gate, the inputs are ABC. The second AND gate is A not BC. So let's go ahead and simulate. Well, actually, let me add an output to this gate, right? So I'm going to go back to design, select the LED, bring the LED over, and then connect it with a connector. Boom, like that. Now I've got 1, 1, 1 selected on the input. So let's start with 0, 0, 0. So you'll see that when the input is not active or not a 1, okay, then your input, your lines or your connectors are dark green. When you activate an input, so set an input from 0 to 1, then you get a light green. That indicates an active circuit. So I'm going to activate. I'm going to set a 1 on the B pin, and I'm going to set a 1 on the C pin. Okay. Now, in this particular circuit, we're going to get an output when when A, B, and C are true on gate 1, but we're going to get nothing when everything is true because this A input is negated, right? Now, if I set that to 0, then everything on the second gate will then be activated because that's going to be a 1 on the pin on the gate. It's a 0, it gets inverted to a 1, and then we get an active high, right, on the output. But that's how you create a simple circuit. And just to review, the whole purpose of this intro video is you select a component, you can set the properties. If you want to negate, if you didn't know about these negation properties, right, then another way to negate a circuit would be to just add an inverter. So let's say I had a NAND gate here, or an AND gate, and I drag this inverter and I just hook the inverter up here. Okay. I'll do it like this, and then I'll add a connector. So that's essentially the same thing, right? Except for this explicit, well, this makes it explicit too, right? But this is an inverter circuit that is separate from the gate itself, right? That's what that's indicating. All right. And this inverter is just indicated by a little circle. Okay. So it's just a different nomenclature, right? It depends on where you need this inverter to be, right? If you just are inverting the inputs, then use the, properties and set the negation on the inputs to each gate itself. That's the cleanest way to do it, right? This just uses a lot more space. Okay, and that's your intro to Logisim. And we'll get more into Logisim, obviously deeper, as we proceed through the semester and we start creating our various circuits. And the very first thing we'll do is we'll create truth tables and see the operation of basic gates. I'll be demonstrating that through Logisim. And then we'll start building combinational logic and sequential logic using Logisim to build, like flip-flops, registers, that kind of stuff, adders, subtract, multiplex, that everything that we're going to be talking about in class, we'll be using Logisim to create. All right, I hope you found this intro helpful.